Hello and welcome to the Ken McElroy Show. I'm your host, Danille, here with Ken.
Hey, everybody. What's going on?
I hope everyone had a nice Easter Sunday this weekend.
I know. It was fun.
We did.
It was.
We took the kids to brunch.
It's nice. It's like 85 degrees in Arizona right now. Everybody's visiting.
Yes, it's a great time to be here. So let's hop in, I guess.
Yes. What's the topic today?
So today we're talking about the inflation crisis and also the higher prices and the recession. So it's kind of what's on everyone's mind. Like, are we going to go into a recession? Are we not? What does that look like? You know, how is this inflation going to affect everything? So we really just wanted to break it down for everybody today of how it will most likely go if we do go into a recession.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So the CPI for the month of March was 8.5%.
Yeah, I know.
Which is high.
It is high. So before we go deeper, a couple things around the CPI. Well, first of all, you guys know we've talked about shadow stats also, which is anywhere from 6 to 8 points higher. Now, there are some critics of shadow stats saying that, you know, they're not measuring things the right way. And Shadow Stats is an interesting website. It basically tries to go back prior to 1980 to measure inflation the way it was. So I'm not going to draw any conclusions today on whether Shadow Stats is accurate or not accurate. I'm just saying that, you know, there are people that say it is and there's people that say it's not. But one thing that's for sure is the CPI. If you go to the BLS or the Bureau of Labor statistics, you can see that the CPI has actually been revised 6 times since the early 1900s. So it's been revised a lot, not just in 80. Over time, as the economy's changed, they've added and taken away things. So it's not so I guess the point is when you're looking at a point in time, you know, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, it is a different measurement today, right?
Yeah, and really, you know, if they did measure the CPI the same as they did in the 80s, we'd be looking at like 16 to 17% inflation.
According to Shadow Stats, that's what they're saying. Yeah, I saw that. So now it sure feels like it. I gotta be honest.
That's the thing. I mean, everything's going up.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys know, you go to the grocery store, you go to buy a car. I mean, everything's more expensive. So to say that it's only 8.5%, that's just not what we're seeing.
Yeah. The other thing is there are some really cool statistics out there about, you know, because the CPI is a basket of goods. And so there are some things that are in the high end of that inflation and some things that are at the low end. So, and then the aggregate or the average, I guess, is 8.5. So oddly enough, rent is not at the top. So things that are at the top are obviously some food, the used cars and new cars, gas, you know, or oil. So all, you know, there are things that if you take a look at the details within the CPI, you can see that there's a lot to it. There are some things that are significantly below 8, according to, you know, and there are some things that are in the teens.
Well, you know, I kind of looked into how they calculate the CPI because I never really ever did, and they definitely cherry pick what they want to count.
I know. Yeah.
So like they were saying, you know, they have to count, you know, meat is one of the categories, but they get to pick, is it chicken, is it beef, is it fish, and they kind of choose what has gone up the least. And same thing with just like everything else, like they get to pick what vegetables and what certain other things, and that's kind of how they hedge it a little bit.
Yeah.
You know?
It's kind of like, you know, we were talking about that employment rate, you know, the U3 is the one that's reported, but the U6 is actually the real one. So, you know, what they do is they take discouraged workers and they eliminate them from the rate. And so therefore the rate's higher. That's the one that's everybody being reported. So it's kind of the same thing, but there is some rational decision. There's some rationality, I should say, around the way the CPI is adjusted over the years. So if you really look into it, and I did, by the way, so this is all the Bureau of Labor Statistics and how many times that they've done it, and you can see here there's been 6 comprehensive revisions in the CPI. So I did dig into this as well. But to your point, I do think that, like everything, you need to dig a little bit deeper because things have changed, and in a lot of cases they should have changed, but they are being selective, and it sure feels. I mean, I know a lot of people that are concerned.
Well, they only are counting housing is reading as a 5% increase. So
yeah, we know that's not.
We know
right.
That's not right. And actually, what I found out looking into this is that they could easily, especially with technology, pool rental rates and understand what the increase is. But instead, they choose to do a survey to homeowners, not investors, homeowners, of what do you think that your house could rent for if you rented it today. And basically, whatever the homeowner says, that's kind of what they use. Yep. And, if somebody's a homeowner and is not in the investment market, they probably have no idea how much they could get for their house. And when their mortgage is, $700, they're like, probably like
so the
$800. And, it might be $2,000.
The people on this channel know that that's a bunch of BS.
Right. If you guys, and here's the thing: the people on this channel will probably never get that survey because I'm pretty sure that they do a good job.
I don't know about you, but I've never been called.
Yeah, I've never gotten that survey. So,
but I know, just from personal experience, because we do follow rent rates, and of course we follow housing rates, and of course I'm in the business of buying real estate right now, and in multiple markets. I can tell you that, as we've said repeatedly, that rent rates have gone up 10 to 20% in a lot of markets.
Well, in Phoenix, it's went up.
It's horrible,
crazy.
Yeah, it's not good as a landlord. It's not healthy. It's not healthy to have $1 to $2 to $3 and $400 rent increases for renters. It's not healthy. So. We need more supply, as we could keep preaching on this channel. We need more supply. We are over 5 million housing units short. For the last 10 years, this is a 10-year issue, not a 10-month issue, right?
Well, and the media and the government, they keep saying, "Oh, it's peaking, it's peaking." I mean, they've been saying inflation's been peaking for months now. And
if you go back, they said it was transitory.
Well, right, it was transitory.
Right, so that's the part
that was the first part, and now they're admitting it's not transitory, but it's peaking. But realistically, we know that's just not true. It's just
I think they have
up.
to. If there's no way they're going to say that it's not transitory in the beginning. And
right.
There's no way that they're going to say it's going up ever, right? You're never going to hear that. So it's always going to be it's peaked or, it's going to be less. But every month it's gone up. I think, it doesn't appear to me that much of the, and I did a video on this, a lot of the sanctions and a lot of the stuff that's happening around the world, especially with this new war, we really haven't seen the real impacts. And I think that if somebody wants to really dig in, they should take a look at this article here, which is that the recession is unavoidable. This is from the Dallas Fed. So what's happening is, and there's a I mentioned this very briefly last week or 2 weeks ago. There's a petrodollar system that's been in place since the 70s that Nixon put together based on us getting oil from Saudi Arabia. And essentially all oil was traded in U.S. dollars. And that's the way it's been that way since the 70s. And when we put the sanctions around Russia, as did others, and eliminated what the SWIFT accounts, which is traded in U.S. dollars, it became a problem for them. So now there's a big issue around this. And I also did this one. Check this out. Putin, sorry guys. Putin attacks the petrodollar system, demands unfriendly nations purchase gas in rubles. So this is happening. And the reason I bring this up, because it's not technically inflation yet, But if our dollar is at let's say being attacked or at risk, that's probably the better way to say it, as a result of the oil that's being traded around the world in things other than U.S. dollars, then it's going to hurt the dollar, which is going to show up as inflation.
So we're getting a lot of questions over on YouTube, so I want to
Yep.
kind of address some of these. So to start, Bay had said, interest rates are projected to reach 8%. How much will this affect the housing prices?
A lot. Yeah, I mean, guys, like if you look at the Fed is in a very tough situation where they have rampant inflation. We have this war. We have supply chain issues, and we're undersupplied on housing. So there's a lot going on, and what they usually have been able to do is use interest rates as a lever to kind of tamper inflation. Just that's how they've used it. So now what's happening is if the minute that rates go up, let's say, because they've gone up
A little bit.
If you take a look, housing's slowed. Mortgage applications have slowed. Housing prices have slowed. Not in every market, for those of you who are saying it's not happening in my market, and that could be true. There are markets that are still hotter than hot, and there are still people, seeing prices that are increasing. But in some markets, we're starting to see, it's been a while, listings are being, houses are being on the market longer.
Yeah, and we've even noticed a little bit of price decreases in the Phoenix area.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I don't really think it's price decreases. People are just overshooting, and they used to be able to get away with that, and so they now have to be a little more honest with the price. But houses are sitting longer. We've definitely noticed that.
And so when you have increases in the rate of what you're borrowing, it's going to adjust. It's going to affect everything. It's going to affect consumption. So not just houses. So as rates go up, you would think that the price to purchase it goes up. I should say the cost to purchase goes up, which means that you're probably going to have a less of a demand. So that is the same thing with cars, the same thing with everything. So primarily housing. So if rates do go up to 8%, I'm not sure why he picked 8. Maybe some article said 8.
Yeah.
But that will severely affect a lot of stuff. Certainly apartments and commercial and housing and everything.
But the Fed's in a tricky position because then if they would move it up to 8%, we're in a recession. So that it is the balance of what they care more about, us being in a recession or inflation. And so that is going to be the question that they have to decide, because it's got to be one or the other.
Or stagflation, right?
Right.
Which we've talked about, and I did a video on. It's hard to know,
Yep.
but there's. I was interested. To read this article about the literally. This is the Dallas Fed. They said that a recession is unavoidable without Russian oil. That's what it says.
Right.
So,
right. Or we just start buying Russian oil again.
So take a look.
MC had a good question I wanted you to answer. He said, are you guys scared if a recession happens that renters would stop paying rent?
Well, we just went through that in a little different way. Of course, anytime a renter stops paying, as an owner, you're concerned. I don't, if you really take a look at history, the government is afraid of homelessness. The government is afraid of people not being able to pay. That would really mean a massive default. Don't forget, the renter pays the landlord, and the landlord pays the loan, and the loan is held probably in your portfolio somewhere.
Right.
So, there's a whole chain of events that happens when a renter doesn't pay.
Well, and the truth is that during COVID, the government, basically told people you don't have to pay rent, right?
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of lawsuits with that and everything else. But in a recession, it's more gradual. It's not really like the whole world stops like during COVID.
Yeah.
And people figure it out. They might move outside of town. They might cancel their lease. They might move back in with their parents, might get a roommate. I just heard Peter Schiff speaking about this on Megyn Kelly's podcast yesterday. And essentially he was saying the same thing. People figure it out. But, in America, we've we've always been really blessed to be able to have our own room and our own house and our own apartment. And, other countries, they don't do that, So I think if people start going through hard times, it's not a bad thing necessarily. They're just going to have to figure it out and maybe share, their 2-bedroom apartment with another person, or share, have another family move into their house with them. And, they'll make it work.
We've had corrections before.
Yeah.
I think that's the important thing to note. We've had massive recessions before. Certainly, I went through the '08 crisis, and, that was a bad one. And I think at the end of the day, unfortunately, the affordability issue that we have right now pushes people into rentals. That's not a good thing. What that means is, and as you guys know, I did a video on this called Renter Nation. I really believe if you go around, and I've been all over the world, you take a look at some of these really expensive markets out there, people figure it out. To your point, they live in smaller places with more people. A great example in the United States is Hawaii. So Hawaii is constrained, and the cost of housing is very expensive there. It always has been. And for any of you who've gone there, and you might have 3 generations in one home or in one apartment. And, so people figure stuff out. And
California is no different. I mean, I had friends in California, and there'd be 2 couples living in a 2-bedroom apartment together.
Yeah.
I mean, you just kind of have to make it work. I mean, you have to think, what would you do, right?
Yep.
So all of a sudden you can't pay your rent. Are you just going to not pay it? Because then you're going to eventually get evicted. It's going to be hard. It's going to ruin your credit. It's going to be hard to find another place to live. Or would you just say, I'm going to get somebody to rent this room, or I'm going to move in with my parents, or, you would just figure, I'm going to move farther outside of town. Most people don't just not pay, because there's repercussions to that. And even with COVID, there is. I mean, I know that we've gotten rental applications where people have defaulted and not paid their rent, and then they want to try to move into an apartment, and they can't, you know? And so it's not like it's no big deal to just not pay your rent. And most people don't go that route. Well, even during COVID, most people didn't go that route.
Well, even during COVID, if you really want to get technical, the government never said that they didn't owe it.
Right.
Ever. Same with home mortgages. So they just said that you didn't have to pay it. And so a lot of people took advantage of that, but a lot of people didn't. And I always told everybody there, we had kind of 3 buckets. We had bucket 1, which was the majority. Most people paid. Bucket 2, people got disrupted, so they came in and worked with us, and we worked with them, because the last thing we want to do is displace anybody. Bucket 3, they just bury their head in the sand. They're in denial. They move out. They skip. They stay there. They avoid the knock on the door, or whatever it is. They're just zero communication. So all those things happened, and the bucket 3 was a small percentage of our 10,000 units. Yeah. So, but it did happen, and there were people that took that. They said, "Listen, I'm protected," which they were. And then eventually some of those lifted. Not in every state, Yeah,
that most states. There's still a couple states, but Arizona, it's been for almost a year.
Arizona and Texas has been fine. Yeah.
Natalia has a question. She says, would a recession mean more stimulus money from the federal budget and corporate buyouts?
It could. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's hard to know. But yes, it's a really insightful question. I think whenever you start to mess with people's food or their housing, the government's going to get involved. They have over the years in the form of welfare way back. And so, yes, I do think that we'll start to see those kinds of things. We saw it during the pandemic.
They already do it with Section 8. You know what I mean? Yep, all 8. It would be an extension of a Section 8 type of program.
Correct.
And it's not bad for landlords. I mean, if the government's, giving them a subsidy for part of their rent, take it.
That's right. Yeah. So the answer is yes. I mean, you take a look at some of the homelessness issues that we are now seeing in, let's say, Portland, Seattle, San Francisco as an example, and just look, LA. There's a massive issue. We were down in Venice Beach this summer, and the people are moving away. Right?
Yeah.
And and the police had to come in and clean up the area, and so. it's happened right in front of our eyes, and I think that the government will step in to help. They always have. It's possible that they don't, but then again, think about what happens. What are the repercussions? There's still landlord-tenant laws in place. They would have to change those. They would have to do some kind of moratorium or some kind of new policy that would get fought, obviously. And think of the defaults. These apartments, these landlords, they all have mortgages, and a lot of those are packaged and they're vehicles in a lot of people's retirement plans and pension plans, insurance plans. So it would be a real issue.
Right. We had another question that was good here. Alan was asking, for those with short-term rentals, how would we position ourselves in a inflationary period? So I'm assuming he means like an Airbnb sort of thing. I feel like that would be easier because you could raise.
Yeah.
You go.
I mean, honestly, anything that's not fixed long term is in better condition during these kinds of times. So
now, the one thing that we do talk about with Airbnb that you need to be careful of is because there's shortages of housing, cities may implement rules around it.
Oh, they already are, guys. Yeah, be careful of this, right?
Yeah.
We actually had an Airbnb guy on, and he was great. Jack, right?
Yeah, Jack. Yep.
Jack was fantastic. If you guys haven't seen that one, plus you did a webinar with him too.
Yeah, did.
So there's a lot to this game, and the HOAs are certainly initiating rules. Cities are initiating rules, and it's affecting hotels, motels, tourism. Short-term housing is definitely a thing, a big thing, and it's made a big stance, certainly from the pandemic on. I mean, it was always around, but it's now a full-time legit business. I don't think it's going away either.
Yeah. A lot of people keep mentioning the webinar I have tonight with Rocky. He does assisted care homes. So this is a great option, especially if you're in an HOA and you can't do Airbnb on your property. If you have a larger home, 4, 5, 6 rooms, he basically puts assisted care a facility. They have like 5 or 6 people in there. They all pay $7-8 a month in rent. So he's going to break that down for you, and it's a great option. Another option is if you don't have any money to maybe try to manage one of those homes for an investor. So it's kenmcelroy.com/webinar, and it'll be tonight at 5. And Rocky's great. He's a personal friend of ours.
He is. And guys, again, this is one of those deals where people are getting older. The baby boomers have started retiring at $50,000 a day, and people are starting like me. I'm going to go see my mom this weekend, as you know, and they start to transition out of their primary home into the next level, whatever that is, and so it's happening. It's going to continue to happen, and Rocky's done a great job of he's, I think, building them and buying them, and the key is operations. So it's not just as simple as furnishing a place and putting somebody in there, but there's a lot to it. It's a full operating business, so it should be good.
Yeah. So a lot of people, also, before I forget, make sure you hit the like button. It really helps us out. We love doing this channel for you guys. So just smash the like button. Let's get to over 100. All right. We have some great questions today. It's so hard to pick how many.
Good.
Let's see. SP's asking, what's the way out if mortgage rates go higher by the time you close on your new construction home?
Ooh, that's a good one.
So basically, if you're building a home and you have to transition from a construction loan to a long-term loan, what if you can't afford the new payment because rates have went up?
Yeah. It's so I'm actually dealing with this right now. So my partner and I, Ross, are super concerned about the cost of construction moving forward, not just based on our opinion. We have properties that are under construction today. And so we are on a daily basis experiencing issues with all the subcontractors, their labor costs, their construction costs, all of those things. So you have that. Then you have construction loans, which are typically priced a little bit higher than a permanent loan. So generally, construction loans are a little more risky, which is why they're priced a little higher. Those you should be able to get a lower rate. So you should be able to get a lower rate. My concern would be two things. One would be to figure out what your actual construction costs are going to be, and then work backwards into what your rate might be today. Obviously, you're not going to get a permanent loan on that thing until it's done. So I don't know where you are and as far as timing, but it's a serious concern. And if you're in the middle of construction, there's not a lot you can do other than to manage that contractor and get that thing done.
And it looks like we have a lot of people that are commenting. They're in that position right now. Is they're building and.
I know.
Guys,
listen,
there's not anything you can really do.
The best thing you can do, though, is you can manage that contractor tight because they're having issues with their labor and their subs and things like that. So, if you can cut a month, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of the project, and get into some kind of fixed rate debt. I don't know of anything once you're locked and loaded and under construction that I don't know anybody that would come in and take out that construction loan during mid-construction.
Maybe one thing that you could do is if you have another property, you could refinance the other property and use that cash towards your existing.
If you had to, yeah. The other thing is just there are some products that are called construction to perms. So you might want to look at those. So, and they're not widely advertised or available, but I've used them and they're nice. So you can actually, you can hedge and know what your perm is going to be. It automatically converts. So you don't have to go through a full, refi at the time. This isn't a silver lining necessarily, but one thing that could work to your benefit is that the property very well could appraise for more than what you started with because prices have gone up. And so you're going to want to, you might get that as well. Hopefully you do.
Yeah. Natalia has another question. She said, do you anticipate another rate hike after primaries impacting affordability?
I do. I know. It's an interesting...
I don't think it's a primary issue. I think that they're either going to keep upping rates or they're not.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they know what they're going to do yet, to be honest. I think it's more, they don't have time to wait till after the November elections and, all that stuff because inflation is already kind of spiraling out of control. So they have to decide whether they want the inflation or they want the recession. And so they really have to pick between those two things.
And don't forget they have the midterm. In November. So there's and me, I don't like to go down the political hole, but you have to consider it. There are going to be decisions made by the current administration because of the midterm. That's all I'm saying. So you have that as well, even though that's not necessarily good. So that could bode well for real estate investors. In other words, there's a midterm coming up, and so the administration might try to keep the rates and the consumption higher because, again, they don't want to slip into a recession, even though the Dallas Fed said it's unavoidable with this war and the Russian oil issue. But, there's a lot that they have to consider, and a lot of this is going to be decided, I think, largely about what's going to happen in November.
Yeah. I think that it's going to be interesting to see what they keep doing. And really, the quarter of a point that they're raising it is really almost like
it's negligible.
Saying they're doing something, but mortgage rates have went up more than
they have.
Than that.
Yeah, mortgage rates, because you tried to refinance recently, and rates are.
Yeah, I mean they were 5%, and really it just didn't make any sense to do it.
Yeah. So you decide not to. That's why mortgage applications are way down.
Yeah, because we were going to pull some cash out, but at 5%, the cash flow didn't make sense. Now, when we initially were talking to him, it was like
in
4
the
point.
I thought it was in the high threes.
Yeah, like high threes or low fours, and that made more sense. But that extra percentage adds quite a bit of money.
Yeah. So we decided just not.
Now, our mortgage broker seems to think, and I don't know if he's right, that rates are going to overcorrect, go into recession, and then go back down. So we'll see, Mo. We'll see if you're right.
I know. I laugh. I laugh. It's like, of course you do.
Yeah.
You know,
So we'll see. But
it's temporary. It's peaked.
It's peaked. So make sure you guys check out our Inner Circle group. It is our premium group, and we have Robert Kiyosaki on next Monday night for happy hour.
Next Monday.
Yes, next
Week
Monday.
from today.
And you're going to be able to ask him questions live. It'll be at 5 o'clock. You do have to be an Inner Circle member for that. So go ahead and sign up at kenmcroy.com/premium.
Yeah, get your questions in, guys, because as you guys know, I'm good friends with Robert. He's excited. I spoke to him this morning. He's coming to our office, and which he doesn't come to our office very often. So it's going to be fun. I'm excited about that one.
Well, and Robert Live, you just never know what he is going to
never
talk
know
about.
what he's going to say.
Yeah, and just to kind of wrap up this whole inflation thing that we were talking about is basically, when things get more expensive, workers want more money because obviously they're having trouble paying for their rent and their, food and all of that. But then in turn, companies have to raise the money of their price of goods. And that kind of gets into that stagflation, wage price spiral.
Yep.
And a lot of the economists that we listen to, they're thinking that is what is going to happen. And that's kind of where they're hedging their bets is on, like you did that stagflation video. So things, are going to, get kind of tough. So you definitely want to be in fixed rate debt. I fixed all my debt recently. I had an equity line out and I fixed it into an equity loan. And you want to ideally, if you can, have a property you're living in where you're not paying rent because rents are going to go up. And that's the only thing that you can do. It's the only thing that you have control over. Maybe hedge, get out of cash, get in some gold, things that, move with inflation.
Yeah, I think, as you guys know, I think you should keep your eye on wages and I mean, just in your normal day to day. Now, obviously, what I mean by that is the person that's maybe that's in front of you while you're getting your coffee, or the person that's in front of you while you're checking out your groceries. They're making more money, especially if they're moving around, and so whoever owns that place is getting squeezed on the margin side, and it's going to we're at the beginning of this, I believe. So
Yes.
that's why I don't think that 8.5 inflation CPI is the peak.
Yeah, and to your point, building costs have went up, and so all of these apartment builders and things that are building these apartments, they're not going to charge a cheap rent because they can't even afford to. So
it's another really interesting point on the because I own commercial office buildings, as you guys know. So there's a CPI typically in these leases that is built in. So the landlord gets to pass the costs through to the tenant on a lot of leases. Not every lease. There are different kinds of leases. So I'm just talking about the ones that are indexed for the CPIs. So when those renew, like let's say the averages are up in the 7s, 8s, then that gets passed on to the tenant. So the tenant actually covers these rising costs, and which essentially makes their rent more.
Right.
That's the point.
And a lot of people are talking about rent control too on YouTube. And the thing with rent control is, yes, we don't love rent control. I mean, if it happens, you just deal with it. But, right now we're in a housing shortage, and all rent control does is it stops all building. And the government knows this. So will they do rent control? They might, but it's not going to fix anything. So they know that. So it'll be interesting to see if they actually would do that.
You just have to look at the history. Just take a look at, has rent control worked? It hasn't. So it sounds great, honestly, and from a tenant standpoint, I understand it, but it just doesn't work. So what you have is people in rent control apartments in New York that that's not the point. The people that are in rent control apartments are not people that need the rent control. They're people that have been there for years and years and years, and they're protected by rent control. So the point is how do you keep people in housing affordably? That's the key, and rent control is not the way. There are lots of ways to do it, but that is not the way.
So now we're going to jump into our inner circle questions. So just make sure you go to kenmcroy.com/premium to be able to ask Ken whatever question. I'm going to start with Logan because I know that he's watching. So Logan says, "Hey Ken, I've been following and listening to your YouTube channel for over a year now, and it's been so helpful. I currently have 13 units. I want to get a fixed loan and refinance these properties, but my bank will only do a 4-year fixed max on a non-primary loan. Who do you use for financing to get longer fixed rates?"
Yeah, so this is a good one. I think what you guys need to understand, first of all, about money is that I don't really care where it comes from. So everybody asks me, who do I use? And I can give you names. We use Berkadia, we use Walker Dunlap, we use CBRE. But at the end of the day, guys, these loans get shopped, and that is how you should be looking at it. So if you have a relationship with a local bank and you're not getting what you want, you need to shop it. And so you went through this yourself, and you'd be very surprised. I remember during our condo days, we were doing stuff with Ohio Savings in Ohio. I never went there. I never went to Ohio to cut a deal. I'm just saying Ohio Savings at the time was offering some of the better rates in the country. So it doesn't matter where money comes from, and you just have to know that you have so many options. It can come from a bank in Florida, a bank in New York, a bank in Washington, a bank in California. It does not matter.
Yeah, and you just call around and you just find someone that'll do it. Like I wanted to take my home equity line into a home equity loan, which is a 10-year fixed loan. And most banks aren't doing home equity loans right now. But you know what? I found a small bank in Arizona that's going to do a home equity loan at like a 5.5% rate. And I did it. You know what I mean? So, but it took some digging and some
time.
Googling. And, if you type in, commercial fixed 15-year loan or whatever you want, stuff will come up. And that's a good place to start, and then kind of just.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's a very good question, because I think a lot of people think that everything has to stay local. Yeah, you might be surprised that almost every single deal that we do is not a local Arizona bank. Yeah. Almost every one. Except there have been some construction loans that we've done locally, but almost every non-construction loan is not an Arizona bank, and so it doesn't matter. And one of the other things to consider is when you're talking to a mortgage broker or a loan broker, you want to make sure that they have the ability to pull from all 50 states. So. And they have to be licensed. And so this is where sometimes some of these larger brokerages can be to your benefit. They have the ability to be able to look at hundreds of options for you. And obviously you have to negotiate the pricing and all that stuff. So in a lot of cases, you just need somebody that has the ability to go national and look for national products, because again, it doesn't matter. You don't really care who gives you the money, who wires the money. You don't really care. You just want the deal.
So the next question, I think it's a couples kind of have a disagreeing, so they want to know.
We don't know anything about that.
No, never. We don't ever fight.
Don't know anything about that.
So Amber is saying, we have a unit with nasty carpet in the bedrooms. We are going to replace it. I want to replace the floors with wood because I love the way it looks and I think we could get more rent. My husband wants to do a fake looking wood that is tile. We cannot agree on this. What do you think is the right thing to do?
Oh my gosh. So I got to be honest with you guys. I have had this debate a lot. So I know a lot about this topic. So number one is you definitely are going to have to get rid of that carpet. So The other thing is you got to make sure that if you're going to hold this property a long time, then what I call some kind of a hard floor is definitely something that you should do, because carpets can be expensive, as you guys know, the pad and carpet and all that kind of stuff. So now let's get to the actual flooring. So there's probably more than 3 kinds, but I'm going to walk you through 3 kinds. There's actual hardwood, which I do not recommend, because that is very expensive and it's very hard to maintain, especially with renters. And then there's what I call the faux hardwood, which is the hardwood which is over some kind of a faux,
like a vinyl.
Yeah, not necessarily vinyl, but then there's the vinyl look.
Okay.
So and we've done all of these. Trust me, in the kitchens and the bedrooms and the entryways and all that kind of stuff. So I personally don't think the tile looks great. Because it looks like tile. It basically looks like fake tile. It looks like the old kitchen vinyl that looks like tile. So what we try to do is we try to find a low alternative that is that kind of fits into place, that's kind of in between a wood and a tile. Now, the one thing I will tell you, the manufacturers do this, is they change it on you. So whatever you buy, make sure, please, that you get an extra box of it, because what happens is a lot of times, and we learned this in the early days, that once you do that, then the manufacturer changes the color, they change the texture or whatever. Then you have to replace the whole floor again because you don't have the pieces. But and then of course it also boils down to cost. So I don't know how big these are, probably small numbers because they're bedrooms only. So we're doing entire units from floor all the way through on properties that we want to hold. Because if you take a look at, say, over a 10-year period, the cost of not replacing the carpet, you have to calculate that in. And the tile itself, I think the tile, the faux tile, looks kind of nasty, in my opinion.
Well, and Amber, you have to remember that while wood floors do look nice, this isn't your home, and people are going to have dogs, and they're going to pee on it, and they're going to let the pee sit there for a while, and it's going to warp the wood. They're going to scratch it. Kids are going to drop stuff on it. So you don't want anything that's going to dent or be a higher maintenance, honestly. Yep. And you're not going to get any more rent probably if you have real wood versus a nice looking fake wood. And I think that I hate to say it, I really do, but I think your husband might be right.
Well, the thing is what she's saying about denting is real. So wood does dent, but if you get like let's say like a texture like this table, for example, it's almost like a Formica top, but it still looks wood. This is I think that's probably a better option, but you also have to take a look at your cost too. But usually those come in, and they're pretty easy to install. You can snap them right in.
Yes. So the next question comes from Azuli.
Yeah.
So she is purchasing a property that cash flows, but she just found out it needs a new roof, which is $20,000.
Yeah.
If she were to get it, she's going to need to bring in a new investor for that.
Okay.
Can she assume that the property will go up within a year so she can do a cash out refi and pay the investor back?
No, of course not. No, you can't assume that. I don't know where it is or anything about that.
Florida.
Yeah. Well, Florida might be a different. The prices in Florida are going up. So a couple of things that you can do. One is you might be able to wait on the roof. In other words, because it is Florida, you may or may not have, you might be able to patch your way through it. Not that I recommend this, but, $20,000 to replace something when you didn't know that you needed to do that, is significant. And so it's possible that you can muddle through this and generate some cash flow, I guess. I don't know how much you're cash flowing or anything like that. but 20 grand sounds like a lot.
Well, Matt Smith said that. He goes on YouTube. He said, I'd get another quote as well to make sure it's 20 grand. But you never want to have this outstanding debt that the only way that you can pay it is if it goes up in value. Because if we do go into a recession, what if it goes way down in value? And then, that person, you owe them money and they could take back the home.
And and obviously I hope it does work out for you, and maybe you can do a cash out refi at some point if rates haven't gone too nutty on you, and then you can use that to do that. But if you can, so we just bought a property that needed a roof, and it's Arizona, so we could have waited 2, 3, 4, 5 years. The tenant would have never known, right? And so there are things you can do, but we chose to do it. We actually caught it in time. We had the seller actually eat the price of the roof, and that's how we did it. And that's typically what you should be doing. So I'm not sure how you missed that or how that happened.
Well, I think she bought it on the seller was like, I'm not going to fix it. And so she bought it anyways.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So, but again, a lot of it depends on, does it affect the rental or not? And if it's just something that needs to happen, I'm sorry that you're going through that. But
yes. So Kai has a good question. He said, Ken, what's your favorite watch brand and model?
Good one.
I know you love your Panerais.
I know. I don't have one on today. I actually was. I do. I love Panerai. Personally, I have a fair amount of them actually.
You do.
I don't know how many, but. So I started collecting them years ago. I got my first one in Singapore, and then I bought one in Rome. We bought one in Rome when I was there. We were there just before the pandemic, and so I've been to a Panerai store in Florence, the original one, and so it used to be a Italian naval watch, and it sold years ago. But the original Panerais have gone up a lot in value.
Right. Just as a side note, Chris said insurance companies are now canceling policies if you don't replace roofs over 15 years. So I don't know anything about that, but look into it.
That's very interesting. Thanks, Chris.
So Davey has an interesting comment. So they said that they don't invest in anything, analysis paralysis. Every asset class has people recommending things, and it has bad and good qualities about it. I really can't decide, so I just save 20% cash every week from my pay.
Wow. Well, again, Corey, this is a real estate channel, but I just bought gold and silver recently. Now they're at higher prices if you take a look at history, but you don't necessarily have to. I'm investing in anything that I would consider to be hard assets. And so it doesn't have to. You don't have to just. This doesn't all have to be in real estate. And personally, I'm not all just in real estate. You take a look at things that are. As you guys know, we did a video on this years ago. Actually, not even years ago. But the primary wealth is oil, timber, gas, silver, gold, even water. There's a primary wealth, where the earth produces all these things. And the second tier is companies that extract those, like, think of Mobil Oil or Weyerhaeuser for timber. And then the third tier is paper, the stock or the ETF. So the riskiest is at the top. So obviously, during any of the crashes, the paper gets lost first. The companies try to do what they can to survive. But at the end of the day, the primary wealth is always the strongest. It's at the base of the pyramid. So,
and one thing about the money that you're saving is with inflation, you're certainly losing purchasing power every single week. So that is something that So even saving that 20% is risky. You look at that as the safe bet, but there is just as much risk in that as other investments.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. You can always loan the money to somebody and secure it on a piece of real estate.
So Jessica from our inner circle has a great question. She said, we currently have all really nice rentals in the Tennessee area, renting to mostly athletes and doctors. My question is, should our model be shifting with our future investments into low income given inflation?
Oh, it's a good question. I do think, well, it depends on what low income means. So it can mean different things in different markets. So, there are areas that in Phoenix, as an example, that I probably wouldn't want to drive to, just because of the crime and those kinds of things. And so when a lot of people think of low income, they think of that. So one time I was trying to buy a bunch of real estate in Phoenix that was on considered the slumlord list with the Phoenix mayor. And I said, I'll buy all of them and, help clean up the city and all that. And so I went and looked at them and they were in really, really bad areas. And I said, I would love to do this, but I can't fix the area. So you can buy something for a good price and based on the fundamentals of the area, but you can't fix the area. So if you still have all those influences, whatever they are, you got to be careful. So if you're talking about affordability, it can mean different things in different areas. And so just make sure that that doesn't mean all the crime and all the other stuff, that you want still good school systems. You want, so as an example, let's say you're buying near a university. You would want to buy the lowest area, the lowest price point near a university, as an example, in a good area that doesn't have a high crime. Because your price point, that's your price point. You would not because you could charge less rent. That's always it's the same adage of the smallest, more affordable house in a neighborhood. That's the one you want. So yes.
Well, and also, though, you do have to remember that if she said she's getting 15 grand a month per house, those people aren't necessarily going to be affected by a recession in the same way that the middle class is.
Yeah.
So you're probably fine. And you know that model, right? So if you start going into affordable housing, there's a lot of things that you don't understand about affordable housing. So, athletes are still going to get paid a lot. Doctors are still going to get paid a lot. So if it's working for you, it's not a bad idea to diversify, but don't go all the way to the other end because you just really have no idea what you're getting into.
It's a really good point. It is very much a niche. And I'm very familiar with that price point and very familiar, with, and I will tell you, during a recession, a lot of times that is the market that gets hit first. I've been involved in many, many country clubs over the years, and all over the place. And at one time I was in 3 at once. And during these ups and lows, there's rises and fall of the economy, it's interesting to watch just that. And these are all, doctors and lawyers and business owners. So the membership will go, let's say, from 300 to 400 down to, let's say, 150 or 200, or back up and down, and you can kind of see it with really very, very clearly in country clubs. And so I would just be careful, because that's a market that is it's more at risk than you think, because a lot of those people have stock investments, and a lot of those people are heavy in cash, especially athletes. So I have a lot of friends that are athletes, and they're heavy in cash.
So make sure, if you're watching, that you go ahead and hit the like button. Would love to get over 200. Really helps us out for the material we put together. Also, make sure to check out my webinar tonight with Rocky, kenmcrory.com/webinar. Rocky has assisted living. So he basically takes a neighborhood home and turns it into assisted living care for like 5 or 6 elderly people. He's making about $6 to $8 grand per room doing this. And it's a great option because HOAs typically allow you to do this because you have long-term tenants, unlike the Airbnb model. So check it out. It's free, kenmcrory.com/webinar. So our next question's pretty interesting. It's from Nick. He says, do you recommend putting a coin-operated washer and dryer in the basement to make income on a duplex?
100%.
On a duplex, you would?
Yeah. Well, again, anything that can make you money. It's been a long time since I've done this, but I've done this, and I think last time I looked, you're looking at a couple bucks per wash and per dry. And I think so. I'm sure that some people know more about this than I. Back in the day, it was like 150. So here's the point. depending on how much use it gets, it actually can make sense. So it's just math again. Like if there are 3 bedrooms with families, it's going to get a lot of use. If they're if there are 2 students, one on each side, it's probably not going to get a lot of use. So, it just boils down to the math of it.
And I wouldn't buy them new. Because he's saying here that the washer and dryer is like $2,200. We just got a washer and dryer off of OfferUp for like $600 for both, I think, like total $600. Yeah. So you don't need the newest. Remember, once again, this is not your house. You do not want the newest, nicest model. You just need a washer and a dryer.
And the other thing that you could do is you don't actually have to go through all the hassle of the coin ops or the cards or whatever that they're using, for that anymore. Those are expensive. What you just could do is you could just say, I'm going to put a washer and dryer in, and I'm going to charge each of you, $35 or $50 a month each, and that's it. Call it a day. And just say I'm going to provide washer. I'm going to provide this service for you, but I'm going to charge you for it. And that's another great way to do it. And that way it's just clean. And if let's say you're getting 100 more a month times 12, you're going to have those things paid for in a year and a half. Because by the way, they're not going to be $2,200 either.
Yeah, like I said, $600 is what we got ours for.
So just to say, like, I have a lot of experience in this washer and dryer world. So, $50 is not unreasonable if you back into it. In some markets it might be a little bit lower, like in the 35, but just take a look at that.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. Make sure you check out my webinar tonight. Make sure you hit the like button, and we will see you next week.
See you, everybody.